Good afternoon. It is March 12th, 2025, and this is the meeting of the Board of School Directors for Springfield Township, our Academic Affairs Committee. I'm Damian Johnston. I'm the Assistant Superintendent in our school district, and I'm pleased to get us started this afternoon. In a surprise to no one at this time of the year, we have lots to talk about, and which is why we had a meeting last month. We have a meeting this month, and spoiler alert, we definitely have a meeting next month, maybe even in May, so we'll see. Today, we're going to talk about our ELD program, the program overview and updates. Dr. Lutz and her team are here. We'll get started with that in just a second. We're going to have the principals all here to share with us their mid-year progress towards their action plans. As many of you recall, they were here in the fall to lay out their plans after we looked at student achievements from what they're recommending, and they're going to sort of update you on how those goals are proceeding this year. The middle school team is going to come and talk with you about they have another presentation for you building on last month, where they're looking at the way in which they're providing access to special areas and the learning for those courses at the middle school, their idea for next year. Our elementary principals will talk a little bit about our elementary curriculum guide and our new use for that. And then Dr. Yannicone and I will, and long last, after we did not get to this last time, get to it today, a proposal for updated district calendars. So without any further ado, I'm going to get us started and pass it off to Dr. Lutz and her team to get us started talking about our English language development program plan for the next few years.
Great. Thank you.
Dr. Lutz, all you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Okay. So next slide, please. Hey, so good afternoon. I want to thank Dr. Johnston for inviting the English Language Department, or ELD team, to this meeting so that we can share out on our work on the revised ELD Program of Study Plan. My name is Michelle Lutz. I'm the Director of Support Services, and I've had the pleasure of working with our work team to review our current program of study and to revise the program to reflect the latest regulations for the PA Department of Education and to include our best practices for working with our multilingual students. Next slide. So today I'm joined by our fabulous English Language Department team. I want to thank them for taking time out of their day to be here. We're proud to have a dedicated teacher at each of our buildings working with our multilingual students and their families to help welcome students into the K-12 school experience and help them make progress both academically and in the curriculum. So please welcome Tammy Spoll, who's our high school teacher and our ELD coordinator, Sarah Schmidt, our middle school ELD teacher, Lindsay Zimmerman from Erdenheim, and Jeanette Kohler, our teacher at Enfield. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette and the next slide.
Well, for anyone who is unfamiliar with English Language Development, or ELD, our program of studies provides services to students who have exposure to a language other than English in their home. Some of our students have come from another country, and some of them just speak another primary language in their home. All of our families who come into our district complete a questionnaire called a home language survey when they register with our district. This information is then used to help us, the ELD teacher, determine if a student requires a follow-up conversation with a family member and potentially a screening. If screened, the results of this research-based screener determines if the student indeed qualifies for ELD services or not. If they do qualify, the student can receive direct services in our classrooms and are eligible for classroom modifications and accommodations.
As part of our work, the team created an ELD mission and vision to help guide this process and to align with the district's mission of an equity work. We strive to welcome, educate, and develop our multilingual students so that they are strong and responsible global citizens who are resilient, successful, and able to adapt to a changing world. We commit to providing an inclusive and dynamic learning environment that will help students grow while celebrating their diverse experiences and perspectives, while nurturing their skills and mindset, as we recognize that a global society will benefit from their multilingual background.
So some of the highlights of our work on the program of study include changing our documents to reflect the latest language and recognizing the strength behind our students' ability to speak multiple languages. Therefore, we have removed EL or English learner and replaced it with the acronym ML or multilingual learner. Our updated program of study links the most recent guidance on ELD programming and requirements for multilingual learners as documented in our state and federal requirements. In addition, much of our work centered around creating common educational experiences across the buildings that aligns with ELD best practices. As such, our team has determined instructional minutes required for students based on their WIDA access levels. And WIDA access is a standardized assessment given to all multilingual learner students annually, which measures their growth in the 4 language domains of speaking, reading, writing, and listening. We have also worked to create and provide high school courses for students, which were approved last year by the board. We've purchased intervention materials to help address student needs, worked with the IU to provide year-round access to a computer-based intervention program, and designed new and creative ways to engage the ML family community.
All of our work culminated into a final English language development program that has been revised and will carry us through to the 2028 school year. Our work includes a mission and a vision that you've heard today, program goals and mandates, screening, identification, placement, and assessment procedures, instructional programming information, reclassification, monitoring of former multilingual students, staff development, family and community engagement, program evaluations, and resources. This document will be available on our web page and will be translated into multiple languages.
So thank you so much for your time this evening. We're happy to answer any questions regarding our ELD program of study.
Board committee members, any questions or comments for our ELD team?
I just have one question just about like the mission. Does it need a separate mission that's different to the mission of the school district overall? Because it kind of borrows a lot of the same language, just like, does this then spawn like, you know, every program having its own mission?
So I think some of our programs do have their own mission. We try to tie it into the overall mission of the district, but it is nice to have something that lives in our documents to state specifically what we're doing for, you know, the students that we're capturing within the ELD program.
Okay, you know, that clarifies. No, thank you, Michelle. And I think, you know, the other thing that I do like is the change in the language from English to multilingual. I think, you know, that's really important to recognize those students, you know, that maybe English isn't their first language, or they have the ability to speak other languages. I think that's both, that should be something that's celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, I am wondering, I think what Dr. Averly said makes sense. I wonder if we should recategorize it, that the mission of the school district is only one, but I wonder if we talk about that as the vision of the program and then some of the outcomes or belief statements as the second part. So you keep the content, but I wonder if we could reframe it under vision and then something else so that we don't lose sight of they're a part of they don't need their own, like it's part of the whole. I wonder if there's a way for us to tweak that just a little bit.
It does give an opportunity to sort of like reinforce the overall mission of the school district then, because, you know, we obviously speak about it at like board meetings, but I don't know how much that's reiterated downstream.
Dr. Averly, other comments or questions? With everyone's permission, a part of our board policy requires that our program guide be approved by the Board of School Directors. So with everyone from the committee's okay, we would add this to the upcoming board as an upcoming board action item for our upcoming meeting next week. Is that all right?
I agree. And
I
I just had a quick look at the flip book. It's really nicely put together. I think you've done a good
great job.
Yeah.
I dropped the link in the chat for folks who are participating. For anyone watching at home can certainly see it on our website, but to the participants today, I dropped it in the chat for you to be able to click on it yourself. Mrs. Hubley, did you have a question?
No, I was also just saying I'm okay if you bring it to the board meeting. And I also am in agreement with Dr. Aberly. I looked at the pamphlet and it's very nicely done. And I appreciate the time and energy everybody put into this. Thank you.
Dr. Lutz and her team are a really committed group of educators, so I'm really grateful for their time and their action in getting this completed well ahead of schedule. We were expecting it in May, and so I really appreciate that they hustled and pulled it together so we could get in front of you in plenty of time. Thanks, everyone. While you're certainly welcome to stay with us for the rest of the meeting, I will understand if you have other items for your afternoon. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
So I'm going to get back to where we were. At this time, I want to go ahead and get started with our mid-year progress report. Members of this committee will recall that in the fall, our entire team was present and we looked at how do we measure success. And just as sort of a reminder of what we look at, we obviously look at a variety of things, including attendance and belonging and discipline and engagement and graduation rates. We're not going to look at all that data today. We looked at that earlier this year. But today we wanted to bring you some updates on how we've been doing. So we recently administered the winter belonging survey. And so either Dr. Lutz or Dr. Yannicone is going to provide a little overview on how we did this time.
I'm happy
Lutz,
for Dr. Lutz to do so since she really spearheads this project.
Sure, absolutely. So as you have heard before in many of our presentations, we are always proud of our student belonging survey data. And as you can see, we are again in the mid to high 90s across the district when it comes to asking students their sense of belonging in our schools, if they identify that they have an adult that they can trust in school, and if they feel safe at school. So again, really proud of those results. Those are fairly consistent across all administrations. We do this in the fall, winter, and spring. We've done it for the past 2.5 years now. So great results. You'll see under the parent surveys, we ask the same questions. We only survey the parents once per year. We've done that for the past 2 years. So while these numbers don't match up and align with what students are reporting, I am happy to report that we've made some positive growth in the area of parents feeling a sense of belonging for children in school, and in parents that report that they feel that that their children have a trusted adult in school. So last year, you'll remember that those numbers were a little bit lower. And this year we've raised them to that 78% for belonging and 59% for the adult in school. We're holding pretty steady at feeling safe in school. Last year, 90%, this year we're at 91%. Through our work on the Equity Action Plan, part of the questions that we're going to be talking to our groups of parents about will be this disconnect between the numbers that students report and the numbers that our parents are reporting. So we can dig a little bit deeper and find out where that disconnect is, and maybe what resources we need to provide to parents so that we can get them to the same numbers that their students feel each and every day. Dr. Yannicone, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think you've hit on the high points, Michelle, and I am glad to see some growth in our parent feedback. The other thing that isn't right on the slide here, but one of the things we're really trying to think about creatively is how can we increase the rate of return on the surveys for our parents. We have a very high rate of return for our students. but we do administer the survey during the school day, and so it's a little bit easier task for us. But engaging parents in completion of the survey is an area we're continuing to think about how can we raise those participation rates.
What is the completion rate by parents?
So last year it was about 21%, and this year I think it went down to like 13 to 15%, depending on the building. It's lower.
And is there a particular building or, you know, school level where that differs, or?
Enfield gets us the highest rate of return in terms of parents. They're like the 15%. High school is certainly the lowest. I think they were down at maybe 12. They're like the 12, 13%. But overall, there's not that big of a disparity between it. It's a low return rate of parents participating. Now, I will say we send it out, and this year we also told parents that they could fill it out, one per building for each child. So if you had a different experience at Enfield than the high school, and so, you know, maybe some parents chose to fill out for only one child versus some parents who filled out for all of their children. But either way, it's a low rate of return.
I
Thanks.
appreciate the overview of that, Michelle. And I think, as we talked about, it's an area where we can dig in when we have those meetings around the equity action plan to sort of dig into what might we do to elicit additional parent feedback. Anything else or any other questions on this component of our mid-year progress report? Thanks, Dr. Lutz. I know you have a busy evening. This is my plug for Dr. Lutz's time this afternoon and her team, other members of her team, at our district wellness and resource fair. So she will be at Enfield along with several of us later on tonight. So thanks, Dr. Lutz, for being with us. I know you got to run.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right, so just as a reminder, sort of we did in our 3-year strategic plan identify student achievement and really wanting to see growth on our standardized assessment results, not only in the whole, but as we disaggregate. And we're continuing to keep our eye on that bar. Each building, as you remember, established goals based on their data review from the year before when they were here in October, and each of them are here today to report out on how we're doing, where we are, and sort of next steps. So, as always, I like to kick it off with Enfield Elementary, and Dr. Markle's here to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Just as Dr. Johnson shared, our overall goal is to increase achievement levels for all our students, looking at standardized assessments, classroom assessments, and also results on our profile of a graduate self-assessments. And so earlier in the year, we created some action steps. And we've talked about it in other meetings before, but this is our first year with a new English language arts program called CKLA. And so through that, we took some action steps to make sure that we have a successful first year implementation. And so myself and Mr. Fleming, we are conducting weekly grade level planning sessions where we review lesson plans, student data, and just kind of prep and talk for instruction of the upcoming units. We also continue to facilitate data review sessions. In January, we completed our winter benchmark assessments. These are the same assessments we complete in the fall, and then we'll also complete these same assessments at the end of the year, and it just gives us a nice data points to just make sure that students are continuing to make adequate progress. And then when they're not, what can we do to help support them? And so I'd like to share my mid-year update on these goals. And so I linked in some information from our data. The STAR literacy benchmark is one assessment that we do, and I wanted to highlight the scores from this time in January last year versus the scores this year. Sometimes we do anticipate a drop in our scores when we have a new program or any type of change to instruction, but I'm happy to report that we actually did not have a drop. We had an increase. And so just looking just by columns right now from January 2024 to January 2025, where last year we saw 92% of our students meeting this benchmark. This year, we actually have 95% of our kindergarten students meeting this benchmark. And then for first grade, In last year, we had 86% of our first graders meeting the benchmark. And this year, we're reporting 93% of our students are meeting this benchmark. And then as you see for second grade last year, we had 86%. And this year we have 89%. I did color code just to see. So if you see the purple, just to show the cohorts. And so in the 92% from kindergarten, that's the group that's now in first grade of January 2025. So even if you're looking across that cohort, that, you know, a 1% increase from last year to that first grade. So seeing some good growth with that. And then similar with our last year first graders who are now in second grade. So from that 86% from first grade, we're still continuing to have students meet that benchmark for that cohort. Some things that I'd like to, you know, attribute that to success is I do feel that we're having a successful implementation of our new program. We are having very successful collaborative planning meetings as teams where lots of great information is shared and ideas are shared. And then also just, you know, going through it together is, I think, the best way to say it too. Like everyone's kind of in it together. We've had some good professional development sessions based on our new program. And then we continue to have our data review sessions. The students that are not meeting those benchmarks, we are providing reading and math interventions to help those students continue to work towards making that grade level expectation. What questions can I answer for anyone?
Perfect, Dr. Markle, thank you.
These data are great. I think it's kind of nice as well having kindergarten first and second grade in the same building as well. So they're getting that consistency. You're not getting that disruption of the second graders moving. So having those like that youngest cohort of students is probably also beneficial.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Yeah, I've shared this. Even I'm having more incoming kindergarten families tour the building too, and like we talk about the value of having every single kindergarten, first and second grader have a similar experience by coming to one building, and so I think there's some power to that.
This is great. Good job.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Markle? Mrs. Bell.
Hey, and I'm sorry, you may have said this, and if you already said this, I'm sorry. Did you say so when I look at January 2024 in the purple, right? When you do the January 2025, am I comparing the kindergartners then to the first graders? Like these are the same kids?
They're the same kids, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a quick snapshot, but they are the same kids. So they even that 92% hit that mark, we were able to get 1% more now that they're in that first grade.
Okay, so that's how I'm comparing it. The color.
Yeah. Yes. And not, sorry, you know what, I should have changed, but obviously not the white, because our second grade last year are now third graders.
Thank you.
Questions? Any other questions for Dr. Markle? Fantastic. Thanks, Dr. Markle.
Thank you.
I appreciate that you always go first. Right along, and no surprise to no one, comes our other elementary program. Mr. Spiker is here to talk about the Erdenheim Adventures this year and his goals and his action steps.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here this afternoon. So a lot of similarities in our goals and our action steps as what Dr. Markle just shared from Enfield. Similarly, we're on this new ELA curriculum implementation journey together. So there's actually a lot of combined work from K2 and 3-5. Very similarly, our goals this year were to have an effective implementation where teachers are feeling they're supported, they're effective at teaching our new curriculum, so that they are able then to positively impact student learning, right? So we had the goal about implementation, and then also on our assessments, hoping to see an increase in students being on track for grade level proficiency on the PSSA from fall to winter, and then from winter to spring, and very similar action steps as Dr. Markle in terms of really making sure that that teachers supported by me and Miss Mack, our assistant principal, every week, sitting down together. So for example, fifth grade this week is starting a new ELA unit on the Reformation. So like a very deep, heavy content. So we sat together as a team to look at the lessons, to walk through the unit, and to ask questions like together, so everybody felt prepared and set up for success for something that they are doing the first time. So it's a big lift for teachers. And teachers have really just done a great job of diving into that new content, and really being prepared to teach something for the very first time. And again, like similar to Dr. Markle, I'm having this action step around Ms. Mack and I also having weekly times where we are going into classrooms to see how things are going, to share feedback, to share ideas, and to inform our planning meetings so we can really make sure that we're supporting teachers with what they actually need from being in the classroom to see that in action. So those were our goals and action steps. And if we go to the next slide, then we can see how things have played out. So our data looks a little bit different than Dr. Markle's for a couple reasons. So first, so we use the Linked assessment instead of STAR. So this actually is also our first year at Erdenheim doing the Linked assessment. So we used to do STAR, now we're doing Linked. So we don't have those apples to apples comparison. Linked is sort of a higher bar. It's a more rigorous test that is trying to make sure that kids are really on track to pass the PSSA at the end of the year. So a couple things in the data, right? So it shows in the fall, 52% of kids were sort of on track, predicted, with a high degree of confidence to be proficient or advanced on the PSSA. In the spring, the number has increased to 56%. The test is set up that it is equally challenging to get proficient each administration. So 52% to 56% is showing that kids have made actual more progress than like it's sort of expected, and are sort of like and are gaining ground towards that proficiency bar. So that does show that kids are learning a lot so far. Obviously, those numbers, we want them to be higher than 52 and 56 because this is our first year with Linked. We don't have comparison data from previous years to see how accurate are their estimates for us, how accurate are their predictions. So we would expect and hope that these numbers on the actual PSSA are higher than this, but we just don't have the apples to apples Erdenheim comparison yet. But it is good to see that kids are moving in the right direction and more kids are hitting that bar now than were in the fall. And then these other 2 points here again, things we said that we were going to do in terms of planning meetings and walkthroughs are happening every single week, having those meetings every single week, having those walkthroughs. And we wanted to see how that was feeling to teachers. So we gave them a survey and we said, in essence, how supported are you feeling? And 90% of teachers said that they felt supported, felt set up for success, felt they had the support from trainings, from the publisher trainings, from administration, that they had what they need to be able to be successful in our new curriculum this year, which we consider for the size of the lift and the size of the change, is a number that we're really proud of so far this year. So that is where we are midway through the year at Erdenheim. What questions are there that I can answer for folks?
Anyone?
No, I think it would just be a case of seeing what the data look like when we have them. It's, it's, I guess, too early to tell unless there's like an experience based on like a different school district or some such data. But I think it would be good to see those data when we have them for Springfield.
Yes, I'm very curious and eagerly anticipating that as well. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Spiker. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Dr. Mangano, you're up.
Okie doke. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be following my colleagues, and we're going to talk a little bit about where we are mid-year at the middle school. As everybody already knows, there's a ton happening here. I feel like there's my mid-year and then there's, oh, by the way, a ton of construction. So as you can see from this slide, our goals, besides being also, I guess, to add being brand new principal and coming in right before school started. And so really having to get to know teachers and students and families, in addition to supporting some what I feel really strongly about coming in to help support district goals through building-wide goals. So along the lines of the district goals in terms of student achievement and equitable practices and staff development, we looked to really try to drill down into our Tier 1 core instruction and behavioral practices. And I'll talk a lot about what that means in a little bit, and into also really work to develop and build the capacity and the skills of the staff. Still looking at engagement and rigor in observations as well as walkthroughs and how that truly has an impact on student achievement. So where we're at, besides looking at our PSSAs, is kind of taking the data points that both Meg and Ben mentioned, whether it's proficiency rates on the state assessments or Linkit data. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into what we're doing to really address some of those right in our instruction. So some of the action steps we've taken, and I have to give credit to the staff. We've taken many. They bit off a lot this year with having a new administrator and really trying to come together as a new group. That in and of itself was a huge goal, and we're doing really well. We've used all of our, I would say most of our professional development and our faculty meetings as professional development, and in addition, our team meetings and grade level meetings as really time to professionally develop and have conversation around some of the action steps I'm going to speak to, which were how are we developing common data protocols? So what do our team protocols look like? Do we have a consistent protocol that we're all kind of speaking the same language no matter what meeting we go to? So we have found that there's pockets of this in our building, but we need to develop a consistent structure. We wanted to also talk about common language, guiding questions. How does that professional learning process work? How are we looking at data? Are we having questions as departments, and looking at the way that we're questioning students in our lessons, and also obviously keeping in mind profile of the graduate and those elements. Next slide, please. So here's where we are. And again, I think we've accomplished a lot. So in terms of some of the when I say tiers, so levels or tiers of instruction, like the way we're going to look at how we're supporting our students, we have and are in the middle of still working through what we're calling our Springfield Township Middle School MTSS framework, so multi-tiered system of support. So what we're doing around that, as I mentioned, to get to that point, we did a survey with our staff and our students in the beginning of the year. So we sought out some input into where we were currently. We've defined and developed what's called a core support team that's made up of administrators and school counselors and a school social worker, sometimes our nurse, sometimes our school psychologists, but to really kind of take a deep dive into some of how are our students doing, that achievement piece. We've actually partnered with the IU, and what we're doing with them is we're really kind of taking a look at all of the pieces of the goal I've already mentioned, but how are we developing those protocols and structures at our school so that no matter what meeting we go into, whether it's a team meeting with a parent, whether it's a meeting with a department, some of the meetings that Meg and Ben mentioned, how are we talking at a grade level, that there's a structure and a protocol in place for how we're doing that. And we're finding that we do that a little differently everywhere, and we really want to synthesize the way we're having those conversations, and that we're really focused truly on meeting the needs of our kids and how we plan to do that when we find that there's a need, whether at any end, whether it's at an enrichment end or a learning need. So we are also, we've done a lot of walkthroughs and observations. And I would also say a lot of listening and dialogue with staff. They're very strong. They have a lot of knowledge. And I sort of describe our building as we're playing a lot of different songs in a lot of different places. And what we want to do is bring all these fabulous instruments together so that we're making a lot of great music together. We are looking at a lot of time this year for one of the pieces we're missing in our framework, or we're looking to create. You're going to actually hear a little bit more about this later, is a block of time where we can truly, and Meg mentioned it in her presentation, was providing actual intervention. So at what point in our day are we really able to provide intervention or enrichment for students? Some districts call this an E&I period. Some people call it a WIN period, but we're looking to really make sure we have that time built in, not only in our instructional lesson block, if you will, but an additional time in the day. So we've been looking at student data, again, team protocols and processes, and how we're really structuring our time, whether it's in our instructional block and throughout the course of our day. Along those lines, in our walkthroughs, we're constantly as administrators looking at the relationship between teacher and student, student to student. Where's the engagement? Is there rigor? Are there high level thinking questions? Is there questioning happening? That's sort of what we've been trying to capture in our observations and our lessons, and then having those very candid conversations with teachers. And one of the most interesting things I'm about to do with Profile of a Graduate is I am going to be teaching a lesson, presenting a lesson to all of grade 8 together. I had Aaron from technology help put together a presentation, and we're actually going to have a full conversation with 8th grade and sort of teach them that process and go through some of their work about how they're going to upload. Our hope is to start that process much earlier on, but I figured a direct instruction coming from me would be a great framework for them. So that's what the last 2 bullets mean.
Dr. Mangano,
Yes.
questions or comments for Dr. Mangano this morning?
Yes,
This
sorry.
afternoon. Oh my gosh, this
Yes.
afternoon. Where are we?
Any questions? Sorry, I spoke very fast. Sorry about that.
I think, you know, as we're getting into that, like, you know, this group of students that are kind of like been through COVID, I think that you know, that EI aspect is like terribly important. I was actually discussing with a colleague today about, you know, some of the different impacts we've seen with like our students, you know, in that post-COVID period. And I think, you know, there's probably still a little bit of a hangover from that. So that EI thing, component, I think is really important. The other question that was really a comment, but the actual question I had was around how much of this involves like some of the paraprofessionals that sit around those students, as well as like the teachers, the administrators, because some of those sit really close to some of like the more vulnerable students and probably have a really good insight into, you know, some of those protocols, data collection as well. So that may be like another aspect to consider as well.
For sure. We are actually, we meet with Nicole and I, Nicole supervisor, we meet with our support staff every month. So we make sure that we sit and we take in what do they need to know and what do they need to learn and how can we help them, kind of give them PD around these areas. But truly, to your point, an E&I period, if we're able to at some point make it by grade level, would be all hands on deck. So everybody's helping everybody, no matter who you are, with truly, I mean, I love the win phrase because it's really what I need. And what I need is different from what somebody else might need. So really kind of framing that. And you're right, this is the time where sort of that linked data comes to play, all the rates of proficiency. And are we really looking at all of our subgroups to make sure that everybody's proficiency rate is climbing? And what are we doing to really address all of those subgroups, not just one? And I think that giving time to that in whatever way, shape, or form we need to, and like you said, getting all hands on deck is going to be the only way we can do it.
But I do love that like thought around consistency, more like protocoled, you know, management and, you know, that alignment, because that's where you're going to get, you know, data that you can compare like year on year.
And everybody having that same framework. Yes, for sure.
Mrs. Beltini, your hand raised?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to add something too. I'm sorry. I don't know if Lee was done. Lee,
Done. I'm all done.
Oh, okay. I just want to say I totally agree with the whole EI time thing. It sounds fantastic. On a side note about the middle school and the construction, as you can see the difference at dismissal when massive amounts of students are kind of pouring out one door. And I just wanted to say to Dr. Mancano, my son almost ran you over the other day. His zest to get out of the building. So I apologize for that.
That's okay. We're working to be safe. I think I might have probably ran through traffic myself so that I was trying to help kids kind of, you know, shuttle them a certain way. I think once we get into a rhythm, we'll be okay. Today was like an official fence day, if you will, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Thanks, Dr. Mangano. Any other questions? Excellent. All right, last but not least on our building leaders, Dr. Rittenhouse is here this afternoon to give us an update on what's happening with the high school and their goals and action steps.
Hello, Dr. Scragan is with me to my left here. There are our goals, support students in choosing and enrolling in one self-identified challenge course each year, develop programs to support successful transition to high school, and then shift the cognitive load to students by engaging collaborative learning models. And these are some of the action steps that we discussed in the fall. Promoting the value of a challenge course, build a peer mentoring program, create a freshman orientation process for lunch and learn, offer parental outreach and education through family engagement events, design professional learning, focus on instructional practice, and then utilize student feedback and voice to guide our program. From that first slide, and we'll talk about the mid-year update in a second. Actually, now, thank you, Dr. Yannick, Dr. Johnson.
Did I go too fast? I'm
No,
sorry.
you didn't. I was building up to it. So the challenge course, we're beginning the scheduling process and talking about this. A challenge course goal would be to encourage students to take somebody who loves music to take an art class, somebody who loves art to take a music class, somebody to move up a level, something that would be challenging to you. And it's not just in terms of rigor. It could be just, like I said, a different type of course that you typically wouldn't take. We have kids who take all of our art classes and all of our music classes, and then we have students who won't take that class, or maybe you take a fifth year of science or math or something along that, something that would be challenging to you, almost like for us, almost like something you would do in an adult learning class, something you would not typically do during your 4 years. And that's obviously part of what we're going to encourage our student panel, which we have for this Thursday for curriculum night to talk about what they felt as challenging. Transition to high school. Kutztown High School, it's a program that we had looked at, has a student mentoring program where high school, where the seniors mentor the freshmen, and we through the Ed Foundation, we have funding through that for next fall. It's a program that I saw at the principals conference this summer with we go to the Principals Association conference every summer, and we present and we watch the Kutztown High School program, and I've linked up with their principal, and that's something we'll have in the fall of 2025. I think it was also talked at some superintendent meetings, and we're looking forward to that. And we have had a bunch of high school and middle school with the high school, they've set up visitations for 8th and 7th grade students. Some of the visitations have been like full groups, which will continue in the spring. Others have been students simply coming up and wanting to visit the high school. We also get emails from families for private schools to come see us, and we do all kinds of tours. And those 7th and 8th grade visitations again have been by groups and singular. Anything to add to transition, Dr. Z?
No. That's about it.
And we were looking at collaborative learning models, and we shifted that focus to school-wide look-fors, which are identified by the teaching staff. And look-fors would be 3 things that we as an administrative team would look for when we do our walkthroughs and we do our observations. It could also be something that the departments talk about. And we had some very robust in-service time where they identified those 3 or 4, what they're looking for outstanding class. So that is your mid-year update, and we're excited. We have our tomorrow night, we have our program of studies, which is our curriculum night tomorrow night. So we're looking forward to that.
Thanks, Dr. Rittenhouse and Dr. Scragan, hidden right there. Any questions or comments for these two?
I have a comment around the challenge course aspect. So Dr. Rittenhouse, thanks for the explanation, because when I was reading that, I was like, oh my goodness, that makes it sound like every student is expected to do, either something like super challenging, like like AP math if they're not already, if they're not very proficient. But I think that explanation piece is really important. I have a middle schooler who will struggle to write their own name, and so it's like really thinking about how does that challenge fit for every student. I just think like maybe like the wording kind of scared me. I was like, oh no, a challenge course, but really it's about maybe like, not even like a challenge course. It's like a goal that a student wants. Now it could be a course, but it could be something else, it seems.
It could be something different, like speaking about my own children, my a son who's a landscape architect, and he has reflected. He's like, Dad, I wish I took more art classes. He, as we speak, is designing outdoor spaces in Orlando, Florida. And his math and science classes certainly helped him with that. But in reflection, that would have been a challenge for him because he's with individuals who are really great artists and great designers, and he has had to kind of catch up. So challenge can also be something, like I said, that's different, something that you would look that you typically wouldn't do. You don't know how to play an instrument, so you take a guitar class. You want to act in a play, so you take a theater class. Something along those lines.
And it came out, if I may, it came out kind of a discussion from kind of changing or shifting the dialogue a little bit in terms of moving those students away from thinking that I've got to push these classes to get these grades for my transcript, and let them realize that really if you're moving on to, let's say, secondary education, they're looking for well-rounded individuals. They're looking for people who can do a little bit more and explain why they're doing more, and that's what we want students to be able to do. So if, for me, a challenge course would have been an art class. I have a son who's extremely artistic, but I'm lucky if I can do a stick figure. So but that would, for everybody, it's gonna be a little bit different, and it's something we want to emphasize to everybody as they go through the scheduling process. One of the things we're going to be talking to parents about tomorrow night is, listen, start now as 8th grade going into 9th grade. Look at what's required. Start planning out your courses for things that you want to do. We have a planning guideline in the course of studies, program of studies, where you can actually see, hey, if I want to go and end up being an engineer, or if I want to do cosmetology, or I want to do protective services, how can I get there? What's the pathway I can get there? And hopefully start developing that now, so that they're not sitting there their senior year going, I really should have taken that course when I was a freshman. Like, that's not the time to be talking about it.
Yeah, no, I love that we have that kind of ethos for students, right? Just think about maybe something different.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dr. Aberly. Any other questions or comments from the team?
I just wanted to say, I think this is great to like see what we saw in the beginning of the year and see where we've come. So I appreciate the time and energy again that everybody puts into putting this all together and shares all this with us. So thank you.
Got it. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Last but certainly not least, on behalf of the Office of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Dennis is going to represent both she and Dr. Lutz in providing their update.
Thank you. Yes. So Dr. Lutz and myself, and also Nicole Schrage, who is our special education supervisor, have been really working collectively to bring some structure around our MTSS planning. So again, one of our first goals was really to look at our responsiveness to student needs and improve those MTSS services so that kids are maximizing their access to core instruction. We want to increase performance across all academic measures. So we did several things this year. We have successfully established an MTSS committee. We reviewed and vetted several different behavioral screeners in order to pilot next year. So again, like many of the staff have talked about tonight, using Linkit to start to assess where students' academic skills are. We want to also use some standardized measures to assess students' social, emotional, and behavioral levels, so that we can make sure we're intervening in a timely and responsive way. So we were able to select one of those, and at the end of this year, we'll make some recommendations about where and how we could implement a pilot for a behavioral screener for the school district. We meet with our PD teams regularly, and then we were also looking at professional learning at faculty meetings for MTSS teams and intervention resources to guide us. So that was our goal. And then I think on the next slide, Dr. Johnston, thank you. So our committee has met multiple times. We've reviewed our screener. We have a recommendation that we'll be making at the end of the year for implementation. We created a Schoology course, and we are building out some coursework for both professional teams as well as our administrative teams that really centers around MTSS best practices. And we are working on and will have completed at the end of the year an MTSS handbook. We've talked a lot with our teams around just building some more structure around how we determine when students need intervention, what it looks like, how we monitor their progress in that, when is the right time for a student to exit intervention, when have they shown the growth needed in order to no longer require that intervention any longer. And so we're kind of consolidating all of that type of information and building some guidance around best practices for MTSS in the district.
Dr. Dennis,
Yes.
any questions or comments for Dr. Dennis for her team?
So who is the audience for the MTSS handbook? Is that staff or is that parents? Who?
So our audience at this point is our staff, but the next step would be for us to make some more front-facing documentation for families to understand our thought process around how we run intervention in the school district. So I think our goal right now in working with our internal MTSS committee is to just establish what that vision is, and then we can continue to work forward and make sure that our families have a deep understanding of how we are supporting students across all 4 buildings.
I think that's a great goal. I think you know, of a lot of the things that I see on, like, you know, chat forums around school districts and special education and interventions, etc., is like people not being clear on like what are the timelines, what is the process. So I think that, you know, and you can go digging around. A lot of this stuff is available. It's not super accessible if you don't really know what you're looking for, and you maybe, you know, are a parent that's new to you know, this type of support requirement. So I think, you know, understanding that process, timelines, that type of thing it will be really, really helpful. So I think that would be a definite good way forward.
Dr.
Absolutely.
Aberle, any other questions or comments? I appreciate your time, Dr. Dennis. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The next item on our agenda is our second presentation in this series of sort of small changes we're looking to make at the middle school next year as we gear up for continued preparation for the new school as the renovations are completed. And so Dr. Mangano and Mrs. Brady are here today to have a conversation with us about some ideas they have and what they're recommending in terms of special areas and the learning for those courses. Dr. Mangano, Mrs. Brady, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you again.
Hold on 1 second, Dr. Mangano. Building administrators, while I love having you, those of you who are completed with your report, if you have, shall we say, other pressing matters to attend to, I certainly understand if you need to step away. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Home to walk the dog. So see ya.
Thanks, everyone. Dr. Mangano, pardon the interruption.
No worries. We can go to our next slide. Okay. Oh, and it's a duplicate of, hey, here we are again. Thank you for having us. So the perfect part about what we're about to discuss is that it's already been sort of set up in terms of some of the goals I've already been talking about. Actually, Dr. Dennis was mentioning some of the MTSS work. I mentioned it in the beginning. Really what we're discussing this evening is some of the changes we're looking to sort of make in the building that have to do with, again, getting back to creating opportunity, what I'm going to call equitable access to evidence-based practices for all learners. And the way to really set that up is to make sure that we have time in our day to be able to do that. So we're going to speak a little bit tonight about these are the reasons why. So this is the reason for the framework, to make sure that all students have access, equitable access to grade level material and classrooms, ability to learn at high levels, and again, ties right into our district goals of feelings of hope and belonging. These things we're going to also speak about tonight tie right into our goal for student achievement, equitable access. These are our district and building goals. I really work to make sure that the work we're doing in our building ties directly into the work of our superintendent and our school district and our board so that we're supporting, you know, everything from the ground up. You can go to our next slide already, please. So a little bit about how we got here and why we're having this conversation tonight. Since the very beginning of the year, I touched on this a little bit. I have been really looking, we as an administrative team here have been really looking hard at all of our achievement data and our student performance data. And while we are doing well in overall, I would say, there are definite areas where we are really wanting to make sure we're providing some targeted support, as I mentioned earlier, in our subgroup areas, in terms of really looking at special education. Are we meeting the needs of every single solitary subgroup so that they too can continue to achieve and grow in that level of achievement? So we're looking constantly at student performance data. We are looking at right now, as I mentioned earlier, our team structures and meeting protocols. Is there consistency in the way that we're functioning in every sort of team setting to be looking at all different types of data, whether it's an achievement piece of data, test scores, attendance, nurse visits, you name it, everything we talk about becomes a data point here. We're also analyzing our current schedule. We've been having a lot of conversation about that because, as Dr. Johnston mentioned, and everybody sees, we're heading towards a brand new building. And so we want to align the way that the building is going to be set up, and our practices and our structure from within has to also, we want that to match. And we also really believe that we're doing well, but there's always room, and we should be looking at constant ways to grow and keeping up with what's happening, what's new. Can we do something better? Can we be better for kids? Can we be better professionally? We've been taking a lot of feedback. So I really do believe in spending a lot of time listening to our teachers, listening to administrators around us, looking at other districts, what's everybody else doing? And then one of the biggest also pieces of feedback are our students, talking to them, hearing from them. What do they want? What are they looking at from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? Really, they have a good handle on where they want to be and what they want we call it their home away from home to look like. This is a place they spend an awful lot of time. We really want to make sure that we're listening to, how they think and feel about the way that we provide their customer service, if you will. We surveyed the staff. I meet with the staff as often as I possibly can in and out of their classrooms, and my office is pretty much an open door, and they have open access to me whenever they need that. And really getting a feel for them. How do they feel about what's working, not working? We've interviewed administrators, both, as I mentioned, on-site, locally, around us, and we looked really at schools that have that similar profile and similar setup. And then we really looked to create some goals. What can we do now? While we're here this year, while we're living it, what can we look to make if we're going to make any kind of changes for next year, like incremental changes, going step by step? And what can we really do to involve some changes for 26, 27? Our staff has been very invested in this process. We are currently running in what's called focus groups. So all of our faculty meetings are not just faculty meetings. We're meeting together, we're talking, they're part of this process. They provide feedback and input. They're not used to that, but they're getting on board in terms of how to make things work and really kind of helping us do some research as well. So all of that leading up to what's one of the first things we thought we could do, and it sort of gets back to this intervention and enrichment period. In order to do some of what we're talking about, we need to make and give a clean, uninterrupted block of time in our day. Right now, that's our current flex block. And in order to really provide what kids need, we've got to keep it open so kids don't feel like they're competing. I have to run here, I have to run there, I need to go to band, I need to go to chorus, how am I supposed to go to a club? We've really got to even out that playing field for them so they're not feeling like they're pulled in a million different directions. And the first phase of this really was to take our dedicated band and chorus students who love what they do and really look at how can we really give them what they need and honor that time in a more productive way, such as putting them into that special area block. So tonight you're going to hear a little bit about what our specials block would look like, which would mean putting our band and course right into our day to try to give that what it needs and also provide that other block so we can really give kids what they need on an academic level. You can go to our next slide, please.
So when we were thinking about making this protected enrichment intervention block, our first thing was, how can we support our band and chorus, make sure our students can participate in band and chorus. And our main goal is, I actually got to watch it today, is not have competing factors for our students. The students want to come to their ensemble practice and, just be able to be focused and enjoy playing with their friends and not have to worry about making up a math test or meeting with another teacher. And I got to see it live today. I happened to be in band, and I watched students come in and say, "Oh, Mr. Barlow, I have to go here. Mr. Barlow, I need to meet with this teacher." And by putting and embedding band and chorus into the specials rotation, it's honoring that ensemble time for true uninterrupted practice for them, as well as honoring our other teachers that really want to support our students and our students not feeling they're pulled in different directions. So what we're looking at is creating efficiency with our time. We also heard a lot from our students when we were talking to them about two other things: having some voice and choice in their lives here at the middle school, and also that sometimes the schedule can be a little confusing. They're looking for some simplicity in their life. So we're hoping to provide some student voice and choice when it comes to our specials. By embedding band and chorus into the specials block, we're hoping that we can provide some choices for them. Because at the middle level, we're tasked with two very different things. We're tasked with giving them a variety of options to explore, exposing them to new things, but also we need to help them find their passion. And we really heard from our students that we're doing that. We're exposing them, but now they really want to start figuring out ways that they can dive deeper into specials that they really enjoy. We currently have a 6-day cycle structure, including a marking period structure. So what we're trying to do is explore different structures that will meet the staff and our students' needs to create the best possible schedule as our bridge for next year. This will also, reviewing just our grading policies and our specials. We want to be consistent across the board and reviewing that and bringing that into the next school year. And this will be like just some small steps that we can make by focusing on how do we really want to do that intervention and enrichment block. We can really refine that practice next year, refine some practices of student voice and choice next year, and maybe expand those choice options in the 26-27 school year when it comes to our specials. And then we, instead of having this new intervention and enrichment block for 26-27, we'd already had some time to refine that practice next year. So taking small steps in preparation for 26-27. Next slide, please. So our next steps would be to continue to learn and listen and collaborate with our students and our staff and figure out what's going to work best for this building, given our current structure. Update that curriculum guide and share that at our next academic affairs. In April, we would then start to inform our families, talk about student selection processes for scheduling, and really introduce these ideas to our 5th grade parent night at the middle school at the end of April. May through July would be really refining and creating this new master schedule, and then August our student schedules would be available online.
Thank you. I was just going to add, I think the bottom line for us is really, as Karen said, and thank you, Karen, taking these small steps to providing that balance for how do we really give kids what they need academically, socially, and emotionally, give them time to explore, and then also allow them to develop and really go after their passions. It's a tall task at a middle level because we really are the middle child here, where we're kind of getting what we need to from K through 5, getting them, giving them what they need, and then road readying them for the high school. So that's really a lot for us, but we want to honor, I think, what our kids are asking for, and honor the time they have here, as well as what we can offer them and how we can offer them to go deeper in some areas if we need to.
Appreciate both of you coming, and my hope for our members of our school academic affairs committee is that we're hopeful to give you these little pieces at a time with some focused attention versus just dumping them all on you when we present the curriculum guide. And so hopefully that's making sense and helping to raise any small questions now so that we can address them and be more efficient in our delivery of the overall curriculum guide and our final recommendations when they come back next month. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I think personally, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's a tall order and you have a challenging task. is probably what I would say.
That's why we're the magic in the middle. Just going to say it out loud. That's why what we are. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. I appreciate it very much. Looking forward to that presentation of sort of the overall picture when we come back together next month, which is a fabulous segue to my elementary colleagues. Dr. Markle and Mr. Spiker and I are proud to bring you our elementary curriculum guide for 25-26. Just to get that conversation started, and then I will turn it over to our principals to talk a little bit more specifically. One of the things that you may recall is that in the past, we always brought you in the winter, spring, the high school curriculum guide so that it could be used for scheduling and sharing information with students. But in the past, when we created this curriculum guide, we were doing it over the summer and then giving it out to families in the fall of the year. And we got some feedback that that wasn't really when they needed it. People need it really at the points of transition coming into a new program and then getting to use that as a resource to inform their thinking, their questions, and ensuring that they and their children are ready to go. And so one of the major changes we're making K-8 this year is aligning ourselves with the high school timeline and bringing forward these curriculum guides at this point in the year prior to the transition activities. And Dr. Markle is up first with her kindergarten orientation night in just a few weeks. And so we needed to get you the elementary curriculum guide in preparation for that activity. We wanted you to approve it before we distributed it. Team, do you want me to show the document while we're talking and just sort of give an overview, or you want to talk about the changes and then I can share, I'll share the link. How about that? In the chat like we did before. I think that's actually most useful. How's that? There you go. Okay. Dr. Markle or Mr. Spiker, either of you want to take a turn to go first? Talk about our changes and our updates?
Yeah, I can go first. And Dr. Markle, obviously, please jump in. Yeah, these are relatively minor changes as opposed to last year, where, as we've talked about, we made a big change into our ELA curriculum. You know, a lot of these are smaller things, but are important because, as Dr. Johnston said, we want to be able to share this with families and give them a really accurate, updated view on what to expect in K-5. And so even if they're small changes, we want to make sure they're correct. So things like, for example, this year we added the Ruby Bridges walk as a new special event. It was the first year we did it at both buildings. It went really well. So we think it's an event that we want to continue to do. So we added that to the special event section. So that is the most current update. For something like health, especially in 4th and 5th grade, where some of the content is getting into, in talking about adolescence and puberty, topics that we want to make sure that parents have a good idea for what is coming up. We want to be able to make sure that that information, in the summary fashion, is correct in this document, because this is the first time that we're having health in this way. So I want to make sure that parents, as they look at this guide, looking ahead to next year, have that information about health, for example. So those are some of, I think, the bigger changes that I was thinking about. Dr. Markle, what do you want to add from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a great overview of the changes, but I think even just to reiterate how helpful this document is, especially, when I think about incoming families to our district who's starting at kindergarten, who don't, this is their oldest child coming, and so they don't have a lot of knowledge. And so, we always try to think about providing the most amount of communication, thinking that maybe nobody knows anything. And so this document has a lot of great information, but there's what I actually really love about this too is like the curriculum overview by each grade level. So it's a nice snapshot of really the core things that each grade and students will learn. And so families have a nice K-5 look at what's the experience going to be like. And so I'm excited to share this at kindergarten orientation, and I've already started sharing it because when families say, hey, how can I learn a little bit more about what they're learning in kindergarten, this has been a great guide to share with them.
Yeah. And if I could just say, one more thing I think that I appreciate about this is, while there is a lot of value, as we talked about earlier, about, having, a K2 in one building, 3-5 in another building, the idea that this is a combined elementary document, so families can see that even though there is that like intentional grouping of ages, the curriculum, the learning, the instructional practices, the special events, there's continuity from K5. And even though there is that transition in the middle, so much is the same in what we do that it does feel like a unified experience for our kids throughout the district.
Fortunately, I learned right now that when you open it up, some of the alignment isn't quite right, so I will fix that before it's finalized, after we get the content approved this evening. So I'll take care of fixing those misalignments there. Any questions or comments for Dr. Markle or Mr. Spiker about our proposed elementary curriculum guide for next year?
I just want to say that I'm jealous that I didn't have this years ago. And also, Mr. Spiker, I like what you said about everybody seeing the continuity between kindergarten to 5th grade, because I do think that's important in a district where you were in separate locations, that people still view it as like the whole elementary experience. So I love that idea.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Any other questions? All right. Dr. Markle, Mr. Spiker, thank you so much for your time this evening. Dr. Mangano, Mrs. Brady, I appreciate that as well. We do have a final agenda item, but you have been through this one several times. So if you need to take care of some other business, we understand. Dr. Yannicone, would you like to take a turn in addressing our team today, talking about our calendars? You've been quiet today. I want to give you a chance to speak up.
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to. I know you're going to advance to the next slide. And so for the members of the committee, as we have done in the past, we've been consulting with our parent advisory group and looking at the calendars. We've also consulted with our STEA team leadership just to see, where are the preferences. They've held pretty steadily at these items. So beginning after Labor Day, if it's feasible, ending in June as early as possible, preferably within the first 2 weeks of the month, keeping a full week of spring break. Some people would love us to take the Monday after spring break, but we can't seem to squeeze it in there. Building in some traditional snow days so that families can have children play in the snow without worrying about getting onto Zoom. Having some flexible instructional days, and giving time for family conferences as we have this Friday afternoon and next Friday afternoon. And then parents have asked us to try to limit the half days as much as possible because of childcare. So that's quite a hat trick for us to be able to do all of those things. You have approved 2 of these 3 calendars. You've seen them before. So just as a refresher, 25, 26, we made one substantive change to this calendar. We looked at the dates in October and saw that we had, because of the holidays that come in, we had 3 days, 2 half days and a full day in October, and it felt very choppy for the first full month of the school year to our team. And then when we moved forward to April, if you can scroll down just a little bit, thanks, Damien. When we looked at April and May, we really felt like we didn't have an opportunity to check back in with staff. So we shifted a half day in service in October to a date in April in order to provide our administrators and our teachers the opportunity to get back together and begin that sort of reflection process in the mid-spring around where they are with regard to the year, what still needs to be accomplished by June. And then as we mentioned, trying to have students be finished by the 2nd Friday in June. We just hit it here. The nice thing is that even in building in several snow days, because we have so many additional student hours beyond the minimum number that are required, the 900 and 990, we know we can hold that June 12th as the final student day, unless we have a major incident that pulls us somewhere between 40 and 70 hours of learning loss, which we certainly are hopeful that will not be the case. And so while teachers will have additional time in that third week of June, students do not. For the teachers, we're really trying not to move into the fourth week of June. That's their request because obviously they have their own children that they're managing in the summer, and then they have other summer activities that they like to be involved in. So 26, 27, we made the slightly controversial decision to start before Labor Day in order to meet those June requests. And so you've already approved this, but similarly, we pulled an in-service day in October and we moved it to April. And so you'll see that on Friday, April 23rd. So again, it gives us an opportunity in the spring to gather as a faculty and do some substantive work before the school year ends. Again, students are done on the 10th. And then if we don't need snow days, the teachers will be effectively done in the building on the 11th, which they are thrilled about. If we have snow, they know they might go into that third week, but again, we are avoiding the fourth week. Yes, Mrs. Bell.
Sorry, I couldn't get it unmuted. The calendar.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so everything's kind of littler, even though I blew it up. The calendar you were just on, that the day you changed in October, does that no like half day for Halloween that there usually is, or is that, do you not normally have that when the Halloween falls on a weekend?
No, you're correct. So we have the half day for this current calendar that's on the screen, 26, 27 on Friday, October 30th, because we do continue to have a strong interest, in particular in our elementary schools, in the Halloween parade and classroom parties. And so we are continuing to have that half day on the 30th. But because we have two holidays in September, we moved the October half day earlier in the month, which was an in-service day, to that last Friday in April. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I'm sorry. So we didn't take away Halloween, then you're saying?
We did not. We would never.
I know, I totally misunderstood what you said before. I'm sorry.
No, it's completely okay. And Dr. Markle's still on screen, and she knows better than anybody that Halloween is a high holiday here in Springfield Township.
Yeah, that's sacred.
We understand that that afternoon is reserved for costumes, parades, and parties. It's
Sugar
a big
detox at home.
At home, yes, at home while the staff, we are doing lots of other professional development work.
Yes, usually the staff use that afternoon to do part of the preparation work for first Tuesday in November's full day in service. So they do indeed do that. But for the families for whom Halloween is I'll say it again, high holiday, we make sure that we've got that time set aside for families. Okay. So
are there questions about the 26, 27 calendar? Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
No, of course. Thanks, Dr. Johnston.
Okay.
Okay. And then when we go to 27, 28, and you zoom in here, so Labor Day is once again quite late in September, but Mrs. Bell, I heard your feedback at a recent meeting, and so you will see that we have made an adjustment to accommodate that request. So we're looking at splitting the in-service in August to a Wednesday, Thursday, keeping the Friday that we typically keep because the students usually have full day athletic practices and competitions that day during the day. And then going Monday, Tuesday for the third and fourth in-service days, and beginning the year, not in August, but on September 1st. And so 2 student days that first week, and then a 4-day weekend. So we still give the kids the 4-day weekend. Again, some schools do have school that day, others do not. And so sometimes our athletic events are being held during the day or in the early afternoon on the 3rd of that year. That also gives us a good opportunity, we hope, to be completing our preparations for the grand opening of the renovated, added to middle school. Even though officially they will go in the winter prior, this gives us that opportunity. So first day of school for students on September 1st, short week that first week. And then again, we pulled that half day off the October calendar, maintaining the holidays as we have historically. And then heading down to the spring, adding, because of where spring break is, and that is a presidential election year. And because it's a presidential election year, the primary in Pennsylvania is anticipated to occur in April rather than in May. So you see there that blue April 25th is the primary day in the presidential election year. And so we moved that late spring half-day in-service opportunity to Friday, May 12th. And then again, students are done by the end of the second week of June. Teachers are done by the end of the third week of June. And so we've tried to hold fast to that plan. So what we're looking for from the committee is approval to move these 3 calendars, 2 amended and 1 brand new, to Tuesday evening's board meeting for your approval, or for full board approval.
Dr. Yannikin, can you just go back up on this one to the September?
Sure.
Okay, all right, no, because when it was bigger, you couldn't see the days on the sides of the first. Okay, all right.
I apologize, Mrs. Adderley. There's like a kickback where you're hearing your voice twice, but staticky in the second time. I'm not sure what that's about.
Oh, can you hear me okay now? No?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, no, I was just looking for the days on the side. So yeah, no, that, I mean, I think people might need a kind of heads up that we're starting before Labor Day again. But I mean, one of my favorite things, and Dr. Johnson will appreciate this, because I remember many years ago asking for this, is that the ESY dates are on there. I think that's super helpful as well. So really do appreciate that particularly.
Yes. And we're trying to make sure we have a healthy gap of about 3 weeks between the end of ESY and the start of the school year. And then in addition to that, you know, we're basically starting to use the 4-5 rule, which is common in the county. And the 4-5 rule says that if Labor Day is the 4th or earlier, you go after Labor Day to start. And if it's the 5th or later, you go before Labor Day to start. And I would say that we're at least 50% of the county, that's the rule they use. And then we have a percentage that go before Labor Day no matter what, and we have a percentage that go after Labor Day no matter what. But given all of the competing pieces in this puzzle to try to meet various needs, we feel like we're striking a healthy balance here. And if you keep in mind that the summer will begin in June of 27, I believe on the 10th, the summer will begin June 10th, yes, at the end of the day. And then they will start back on Wednesday, September 1st. That's a nice, healthy summer. So we're trying to aim also for like 10-week summers. And that's also important for our facilities team because they get a lot of work done in those 10 weeks, especially at the middle school in the next 2 summers.
Yeah, I was going to say where we've got so much construction going on. Yeah.
Yes, and they will be up against it every summer till that project's done. So just looking for the go-ahead to move these calendars to the full board for a vote.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
Thank you, Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Hubley?
Sorry, yes, I chimed in when Dr. Aberly did. I'm okay with that, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Any other comments or questions from the committee as we have had a second in a row robust meeting agenda? And I appreciate the stamina and engagement. We have a lot to do and we're doing a lot. And so this committee's work definitely kicks off. It is solid in the spring.
Just think it's great to see all the effort and thought that's gone into the programming, and especially the production of the materials. I mean, some of it you can have great ideas, but if the delivery's not there, so I think that's kind of the cherry on the top. So I think everyone's done a really good job and appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, we have teams who are working really hard to try to really hear that feedback from several years ago to make our schools and our systems transparent and clear to anyone who joins us at whatever point in a child or family's academic career. So I'm happy that that's feeling that way, because that's sort of what our aim is to just really memorialize our decisions and our process so that you don't know what you don't know. And if you at least get a prompt or some information, you can ask clarifying questions. But if you didn't even know to ask, what we heard from families in the past was they didn't feel connected. And so we really are, I think, taking that seriously. And we have lots of evidence about clarifying that and making it clear. We have no public participants this evening in the live meeting. And so I do not believe that there is any public comment. Mark your calendars. We are scheduled to meet on April 23rd at 4 o'clock, hopefully for an hour, 15 minutes. We have lots to bring forward to you. So I'll be more clear about that the next time I see you. With that, I appreciate everyone's engagement and just want to make sure we're okay to adjourn for this evening.
Sounds good. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Dr. Abley, I'll send you the notes, and
thank you.
You're comfortable to make the report at the board meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah, I've got 2 now.
We're a busy group.
Apparently
it's
so.
not as bad as when we used to do policy and we did every single policy week after week after week, month after
I guess.
Right? Like this is good, bad, but not quite that bad.
Yeah, this is good topic. So yeah.
It's good. Be succinct. It's all right. All right, everyone. I appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your evening, and we are adjourned at 5:26.
Thank you.
Thanks.